Thank you for being here this evening. As you know, we have been confronted with an unexpected storm that has hit the metropolitan Atlanta area. Let me tell you where we have come from and where we are now and what our plans are as we go forward. First of all, yesterday, we, in anticipation of some kind of storm coming to the state of Georgia, had already issued an executive order with regard to the availability of propane, which was being expressed as a concern in some parts of our state as to its availability. This morning, about 10 o'clock, I issued an executive order to members of the state employees of our state that it was to be a liberal leave day because it appeared at that point in time that some parts of our state were going to be severely affected by the storm. At that time, it was still, in most of the forecast, anticipated that the city of Atlanta would only have a mild dusting or a very small accumulation, if any, and that the majority of the effects of the storm would be south of here. Preparations were made for those predictions, and you will hear some of the individuals who are here today to talk about what they had done in anticipation of what they thought the storm's path was going to be. We had then, of course, later in the day issued the emergency declaration, but for all intents and purposes, all of the actions that are associated with an emergency declaration had already been put in place because we were already employing all of the resources that were available to us to try to do what we could as the circumstances developed. Within a very short time frame from the time the snow started falling here, it became very obvious that everyone was leaving to go home at the same time. And that congestion is part of what has caused it to be the long, prolonged delays that we are now experiencing, and certainly something that we'll have to contend with throughout this evening. We have several major areas of concern because some of the schools had not released their students early enough in the day for them to be able to get home in their normal fashion before the roads became icy and the school buses could not run. We have made that a top priority. We are sending state troopers, members of our Georgia State Patrol, to each of the schools where children are still there, and it is anticipated that in some of those schools, some of the children will probably spend the night there. We have been in consultation with all of the school superintendents in the greater metropolitan area that are affected by the storm. Most of them have confidence that their teachers and their staff who are there in the schools are adequate in order to protect the children, to provide and make sure that they're comfortable for the evening. However, in speaking with the mayor, who will speak to you in just a few minutes, we are likewise coordinating our activities with his law enforcement arms to once again reinforce, to make sure that those school sites are secure, because if I were a parent that had a child having to spend a night in a school, I would be concerned about their safety, and we want to make sure that those anxieties are relieved as much as we possibly can. Now, there are clogged roads, the interstates in particular, but even side roads that are corridors leading to the interstates have stranded vehicles and people who are still trying to get their vehicles moving. We are coordinating our efforts there to try to do everything possible, everything from extracting certain individuals who are in fragile situations and getting them to a place of safety. And that will be a continued effort with the help of the National Guard, who have now been engaged in this effort, as well as the activities of our law enforcement arm, as well as our Department of Natural Resources that have their vehicles that are equipped and are prepared to be able to go into some of the areas that are still in a stranded situation. We have several individuals here who are coordinating the various efforts. Of course, Charlie English is the head of our Georgia Emergency Management Agency, and Charlie has been busy all day trying to make sure that we've done everything possible to coordinate efforts and make sure that we are on top of it. But the reality is that the storm developed and the volume of traffic became so heavy in such a short time frame that it became difficult to keep them moving in a safe fashion. We also, of course, have the colonel who is the head of the Georgia State Patrol, and the head of the Georgia Department of Transportation, and they are both here tonight. I think it would be appropriate maybe if I start with the Colonel and let him tell you what his troopers are doing in order to try to clear the roadways and to protect the public. Colonel?
Thank you, Peter. Good evening, everybody. What a day, huh? Thus far, the troopers have worked about 940 accidents in and around the metro Atlanta area. We've had a little over 100 injuries. We've had about 382 motorist assists, as the governor has spoken about stranded motorist people broken down. The troopers that are on the roadway, that's part of their duties. We've worked closely with the Department of Transportation today to help try to move those ice clearing assets in and around to the areas that need it the most, choke points to try to get traffic moving. It's very difficult when the roadway is completely blocked by traffic to move those assets, and so we've paired up with them to do that. We've reached out, and APD has reached out to us to see how we could work together, and we will continue to do that. We're bringing resources in from all over the state. The folks that have been working the roadway this evening have been kept there. We've had about 60 troopers here just in and around the metro Atlanta area, and we're going to bring folks in from all around the state to relief and to assist as the day progresses tomorrow. You heard the governor specifically talk about the security in the schools. We are a support agency, and when we are needed in specific roles, that's the type of thing that we do to support local folks. We're not there to tell the SROs or the APD what to do. We're there to support them and to help them secure those sites. A school's a collection point, so not only do we have students, but folks that might be stranded in the community are going to show up to the schools for shelter, and we're going to be there to assist to provide security in those instances. So that's what we have been doing and what we continue to plan on doing. Thank you.
Let me now ask Keith Golden, who is the head of our Department of Transportation, to speak to you about what they are doing in order to clear the roadways. And Keith, you might also tell them what you are doing in terms of relocating personnel from the parts of the state that you had originally thought were going to be hit, and that you're relocating them here to the area that's been most affected in metro Atlanta. Keith?
Yes, we want to echo the governor's concern about getting people home safely tonight. That's been our primary concern the entire evening. We've been working with the State Patrol, as the Colonel mentioned, and it's been our primary goal to get to these incidents or clear them so that people can get the interstates back and open and freely. We started the day basically what we call pre-treating our roads and bridges on our interstate, our high overpasses and our ramps. And we also prepared our crews to do 12-hour shifts and made that as a focus for the state. We actually have a statewide event going on, though. It's not just a Metro Atlanta event. We have a statewide event going on, and we were pretty much prepared for it to be more of a southern track, as you know, of the storm. And so for us, we had our crews in Districts 5 and 4, which is Jessup and Tennille, and some of our other areas ready to go. We were working in our northern quarters up in Gainesville and also up in the Cartersville area earlier in the day. As the storm progressed throughout the day, though, we've decided this evening to start moving some folks in from our southern districts and coming in from I-20, as well as some of our third district, which is from our Thomaston area. And they're also from our Gainesville area. As that storm has lessened up, they're moving into this region. So we will be continuing to work all night to try to get the lanes opened. Our primary goal is to get people off the interstates, get them home, and then throughout the rest of the evening, we'll have crews working around the clock for the next 2 days, more than likely trying to get the interstates open and then start working on those arterial routes.
Before I call on the mayor, I want to reemphasize that our goal is to keep people off the roads as much as possible. We are closing state government tomorrow, so therefore state employees will have no reason to have to be out there thinking that they are coming to work. We hope that others will follow suit, because we need to keep the roads as clear as possible of people and of traffic so that we can actually treat the highways with the preparations of salt and sand, so that we can try to melt the ice as quickly as possible and free those vehicles that have been stranded. Now, at this point, let me call on Mayor Kasim Reed. He and his team are working cooperatively with the state and its resources, and I'd like to ask him if he would come forward and tell you what the city of Atlanta is doing.
Thank you, Governor. I think the most important message is our job is to keep people safe. And within the city of Atlanta, we have not had any fatalities, at least at this point. And we have cleared the entrances and exits for our hospitals and our public safety facilities, our fire stations and our police precincts. And we actually have people that are going into our fire stations and our police precincts. Much like the state, we started treating our roads this morning and on the day before as well. But the fact of the matter is we do take responsibility for having the business community, the government, and our schools basically leave all at once. So this is the help that we need. The help that we need is for everyone to stay home, because everybody who is behind me has a ton of work to do in terms of getting the city and the state back running, and we need to have access to the streets in order to treat them. And by having the business community and government and our schools letting all of those folks out basically between 12 and 3 o'clock today, we created a situation from a traffic standpoint that was very challenging. The Atlanta Police Department, led by George Turner, is cooperating with the Georgia State Patrol because we want to make sure that the kids who are in schools are secured. So to the extent that the State Patrol needs assistance or to coordinate, or to the extent that we need to send officers to those schools, we are doing so. Our fire department also is maintaining a robust schedule. We're maintaining 12-hour shifts, and the city has about 70 to 75 pieces of equipment in operation right now. So that's 30 spreaders, 40 snowplows. So for those of you all that remember 2011, in the worst of 2011, we had about 100 pieces of equipment, but that was 4 days into the storm. So 6 hours into the storm, we're at a significantly enhanced level. But the bottom line is we really need to be out making sure we get folks home. So we're going to be partnering with the governor and his team to get these highways cleared. And then once we do that, all of our time and our energy is going to be directed towards getting the city and the region back moving again. But we're working on this nonstop. We've been working on it all day, and nobody that is behind me has had a break of any kind. So we really need you to encourage folks to stay home, because we've got a lot of work to do to get the region functioning again.
Thank you, Mayor Reed. We also have General Gerard, who is of the Georgia National Guard, who is behind me as well, and his troops are ready and engaged in trying to make their resources available for those that have need of them as we deal with this issue.